Welcome, usual suspects, to episode 1 of the Hidden Catastrophe Science series. In 2013, the CIA allegedly declassified a document produced by a researcher known as Chan Thomas. Over the last 5 or 6 years, this document has gained incredible hype and coverage by alternative media channels. The reason being is that it predicts the end of the world. The document is called the Adam and Eve story, and it's been incredibly difficult to find not only a physical copy of this book, so that we can compare it to the CIA declassified version, as well as the rest of his research, which until now has remained hidden to the vast majority of the public, and was virtually impossible to find an actual physical copy of the remainder of Chan Thomas's Adam and Eve story. In this upcoming series, our team has not only found surprising connections with him into other realms of the conspiracy world, we've actually found an entire biography and complete history of this individual, including photographs and work that was recently hidden by those involved with suppressing this information. These will all be revealed to you in their entirety on this channel. The Adam and Eve story by Chan Thomas is a book of scientific research and dramatic expose of his theory of Earth's crustal displacement. It begins by discussing the next cataclysm, which says, like Noah's 6,500 years ago, like Adam and Eve's 11,500 years ago, this too, meaning the next cataclysm, will come to pass. Before we get into some of the science and what Chan Thomas discussed, I want to quickly do an overview of what we know to date. Chan Thomas's work, The Adam and Eve Story, became an internet sensation and gained notoriety beginning in 2013 when it was originally declassified from the CIA vault. It's Crest Vault to be specific, which refers to a general electronic record-keeping service employed by the CIA. When you download this file, there's a number of very odd and interesting elements to the PDF itself that I'd like to go over quickly. The Adam and Eve story, originally published in 1965, was almost immediately sequestered by the CIA and allegedly placed into a classified file. Now, this is an important distinction after speaking with many intelligence operatives and former individuals involved in this field, that the book itself was not classified. What was classified was the book was placed into a file used for a briefing to an individual named Art L. And typical of CIA, all briefings are eventually classified for later release. It tends to almost just be the culture of the institution. We could find no indication that the book itself was a classified document. This would typically have required markers to be placed on the document in the headers, indicating that it is classified, as well as the typical 3 levels of classification used by CIA, including top secret, confidential, and secret. What is interesting, however, is that the document in this PDF contains other documents, randomly placed throughout the original text of the book. At the top of each header reads, "Declassified in part and sanitized copy approved for release in June 24, 2013, with a CIA records indicator number at the top." What has been sanitized is who prepared this briefing for this individual named Art L, who we believe we have a good idea who this individual was, that this briefing was prepared for, and we'll be releasing that in a later episode. As you scroll through the document, you'll see the first page after the cover is a cross-section of the Earth. This is an important visual in that it explains, a little bit later on, the process that Chan Thomas believes is the cataclysmic mechanism that causes a periodic cycle of catastrophe on the planet Earth. So take careful note of this. Found on the very next page is, to me, a random Time magazine article related to the perils faced by nations. Many of these are social in nature and have to do with the period going on at the time, which was the middle of the Cold War. One interesting thought to notice is that perhaps this article and other randomly placed pieces of paper in this document serve as markers designed to separate important points of the briefing provided to Art L by an unknown individual that was sanitized out of this briefing file document. As you scroll a little bit further, you'll find another cover page with Emerson House, Los Angeles, and a publication date of 1965. In future videos, we'll be discussing the publisher's involvement in what we consider to be a conspiracy that connects into many, many other realms of the alternative media and conspiracy world. As you continue to scroll through, you'll find page 13 of this document, where Chan Thomas begins to explain the process of cataclysm and what he believes potentially is that process and what it would appear to us and our civilization the next time this catastrophe cycle begins. While looking at the cross-section of the Earth inside of the front cover, you will see two molten layers. The important one is the thin molten layer, about 60 miles thick, which is between 60 and 120 miles in depth below the surface of the Earth. There is another thick, deep molten layer beginning 1,800 miles down at the bottom of the mantle, and it's extending 1,300 miles deeper, known as the outer core. And he says, we know that both of these molten layers are liquid. However, he surmises and theorizes that there is a magnetic and electrical force within the Earth itself that creates these layers to act as if they were solid or possessing plasticity. It's along these lines of electromagnetic energy and structure that maintains the orderliness of the Earth's stable structure. He then says there could be an event that triggers a destabilization of the electromagnetic forces that maintain the orderliness of our crust and mantle and cores, and that somehow a trigger causes the plasticity and the solid-like nature of the inner parts of the Earth to become liquid, which then catapults the crust around 1,000 miles an hour across the entire planet all at once. And this forms the basis of the crustal displacement theory. According to his theory, in about 1/4 to 1/2 a day, both the north and south poles of the planet will rush to the equator, unleashing 1,000-mile-per-hour winds and intense destruction. He then goes on to discuss what is the trigger that causes this destabilization of the electromagnetic field within the Earth that leads to this crustal displacement. In this original book, declassified by the CIA and sanitized in part, he surmises that we once thought the sunspots could be the cause, because they do have an effect to disrupt the Earth's inner electrical and magnetic structures, but that eventually his research was proven wrong in this regard. The trigger, after this book was published, remained a mystery. Chan Thomas did a follow-up book called The Postlude that has been nearly impossible to find, and we've actually uncovered a physical copy of it that we will be releasing shortly. So as part of this overview and general introduction into the theory, I want to leave you with two things. First, the CIA had an interest in Chan Thomas and created a briefing for somebody named Art L, who we think we know who that is, and we'll be releasing that information shortly. The document briefing was sanitized in part by removing the creator of the briefing file, removing his name from the document. We do not think the document itself is considered a classified book by the CIA. However, the briefing that was done, the event that happened, the briefing that was done to the CIA about this man's work was classified for nearly 50 years and has just been recently released in 2013. So we know the CIA had an interest in this. We also have physical copies of both the original book that you find in the CIA PDF archives, and we've gone through it line by line, and that is the complete first book. There is no discrepancy between what you see on the PDF, except for the random insertion of odd notes, which might be related to a briefing strategy. However, what we do have is the rest of the book, the follow-up book, the second edition, which includes approximately 30 more pages where Chan Thomas discusses what that trigger is that causes this cataclysmic event in a cyclical period, repeated way. And it does have to do with the destabilization of the electromagnetic orderliness of the interior of the Earth, and when that event happens, within 12 hours, the crust shifts nearly entirely on itself, moving 1,000 miles per hour into its new crustal position, causing tremendous devastation across the planet. Moving forward in this series, you will see the physical copy of this book, you will see the physical copy and a page-by-page walkthrough of the rest of the book that to date has been unable to be found. We will also investigate who this man was and the interesting and spooky connections he has into many other realms of the conspiracy world. I look forward to having this journey with all of you usual suspects, and get excited because it's about to get interesting and the rabbit hole is far deeper than you could ever imagine. SuspectSky, signing off.